Welcome to Part the System, and today I'm with Jake Naylor. How are you going, Jake?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, going really well, thank you. So, a little bit about Jake. Now, Jake is the Assistant Director of the Inclusion in the ACT Education Directorate. In his role, Jake supports the implementation of inclusive educational programs across 89 government schools in the ACT. It's quite a few there, Jake.
Yes, that's right.
Supporting schools with advice on policy and practice in relation to supporting students with a disability, designing and implementing professional learning, networking, and mentoring opportunities for educators and the wider school communities. Now, prior to this role, Jake held positions as Assistant Director of the Physical Education and Sport, Specialist School Leader and Classroom Teacher in the ACT Education Directorate. Now, outside of his work, Jake is an enthusiastic volunteer and has lots of roles, or has had lots of roles. I think these have been with Special Olympics Australia, the AFL, Canberra Advisory Board, the Australian Council for Health, Physical Education and Recreation, ACT School Sport Advisory Board, Bulls Australia, the British Wheelchair Basketball Association, and the Canberra Region Wheelchair Rugby League. Now, Jake, you've won many awards along your journey, lots of accolades, and I think in the recent years you've been acknowledged for contributions to inclusive education and sport, and have received Chief Minister's Inclusion Award, the Australian Council for Educational Leaders Excellence in Educational Leadership, and the Minister for Sport and Recreation Award for Inclusion for your work with the Canberra Region Wheelchair Rugby League. I hope you've got a big cabinet for all these awards.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's kind of funny actually to hear it all in one big foul swoop like that. But yeah, it's nice to do what I do, and yeah, I don't do them for the lovely awards. It's nice to have that recognition, but where I do it for other reasons, and we'll talk about that today.
Absolutely. Well, there's no doubt you're hugely passionate about inclusion and student well-being, Jake. So I'm sure them awards just haven't come along for no reason. But yeah, thank you for joining me today, and we'll get straight into it. Yeah,
Sounds good. Thank you.
Beautiful. So, well-being. What
Mhm.
does it mean to you?
Well, my personal well-being looks different from day to day and from situation to situation throughout my day as well. My well-being shapes my goals and shapes my projects that I work on, which some of which you've already mentioned today. It's shaped by my interactions with people, their personalities, conversations that we have, but it's also shaped by my ambitions and my feelings at any given time of that particular day. My personal happiness plays an
Mm,
important part of my personal well-being, but it also includes other things like fulfillment that I receive out of completing a task or contributing or supporting somebody. And I think that gives me that sense of purpose and accomplishment with what I do in my particular roles. And it helps me to control the way I feel in relation to my own personal life. My personal physical pursuits play a major role in my personal well-being, but also it helps to manage my emotional state, and
mm,
which both things are really quite important to me. Equally important are my social connections with my close family, but also my colleagues, the students I work with, the colleagues that I provide professional learning to as well. So my well-being involves numerous things, and yeah, it's lovely to take the time to consider it and to
mm,
allocate that time of day to concentrate and to an attempt to improve upon your personal well-being as well.
And for somebody that advocates around student well-being, obviously you looking
Mhm.
after your own well-being and being a bit of a role model is important, isn't it? In the work that you do, and I'm really pleased you talked about purpose there, Jay, because it's an interesting one, and I think we're at the moment people are talking about the Great Resignation, aren't they? You know, with
Yep.
coming out of COVID, so obviously this time has allowed people to maybe take a step back and think about what's important to them in their own lives. But it sounds like you certainly are doing work that really fulfills that part of your life.
Certainly does. It always has, and I think it always will. I'm extremely fortunate to be able to do what I do, and I love it. I love every aspect of it, and it's nice to be able to contribute to other people's lives in the way that I am. But people talk about leaving legacy, and I think my legacy is then passed on to the students that I teach and the staff members that I work with as well, because they're all leaving their own legacies as well. And if we can all be on that same path of inclusion, we're doing things in the right direction, which is great.
Yeah, great. And on that then, tell us a little bit about your story.
So, my story, I'm a country boy. I grew up in country New South Wales with
Oh,
my mother and father, and I'm the eldest of three little boys, and I'm pretty close with my family, which is really, really cool. I'm now a father. I have three children of my own, and my lovely wife all live here in Canberra. So we're we're doing things quite well. We moved here for academic reasons, but then also moved here for work opportunities and things like that. So it's a lovely little place, Canberra, and we really do enjoy our time here. My schooling, if you go back that far, my schooling was interesting. I suppose you could say it was difficult at times. I struggled with academics initially. I found it really difficult to. I think it was mainly to do with lack of confidence
mm,
and in my own abilities and what I could actually achieve. And for the most part, in the younger years, I'd say I was that disengaged child, and I found
mhm,
it really difficult to be absorbed into the programs, the curriculum, the social aspects. For me, my saving graces at school were my core group of friends, those one or two teachers that I think everybody has that resonates and provided that experience or provided that opportunity to have that connection. They were my saving graces, and I found things that I really did enjoy through that. My social connections introduced me to sport, and
mm.
my favourite teachers at school introduced me to sport, and that led me on a path to where I want to actually go with in my career. I was very fortunate. Yes, I was a country boy, but we had lots of opportunities available to us in the country to play multiple different activities. So, um, gone are the days where it was football in the winter and cricket in the summer. It was everything and anything and everything, and I was supported by my family to try everything. I absolutely loved sports like basketball and swimming and athletics, and dabbled at softball and baseball and cricket and everything, which was really, really cool. And I suppose that's ultimately why it led me down the pathway of pursuing a teaching career, because I saw myself being disengaged, but then having that one person that then spent the time and effort to get to know me and modify curriculum to suit my particular needs. Landed me to that pathway, which was really, really lovely. So
And that
I,
and that and that was that was a teacher, was it? That yeah, because
yeah,
it's interesting as you're talking now. I'm reflecting on, being at school, and I think you're
yep,
right. We've all got these teachers that were just so instrumental in
correct.
you know um maybe pushing us into things that we enjoyed or
Yep.
yeah, passions.
Yeah, and I was really, really lucky, and I pursued that at university level. So I went on and did a secondary teaching degree, and because of my love of sport, I also completed a human movement sports science degree as well, just to really understand how the body moves in relation to sport and how we can best improve our performances as well. So once I graduated uni, I then moved into schools, and purely from my background and my interest, I moved into teaching students with disability and
Mm,
teaching disengaged youth, which was always an interest and a passion for myself. And I've been very, very fortunate to work in a large number of settings now, here and there and everywhere. But yeah, that's my little pathway to who I am and what I do. And outside of my role within schools, I'm a passionate volunteer and volunteer for a
mm,
bunch of organisations, as you already mentioned. And I think that also contributes to the person that I am and my
mhm,
sense of self and my sense of well-being as well.
yeah, and I think as we know, the sports industry in terms of clubs, it's just built on volunteers, isn't it? So
Correct. Certainly
Um,
is.
We need the resource. And I tell you what, we must be passionate about inclusion in sport, having this conversation as we are, because at this moment in time, the actual Ashes is playing, isn't it?
I know, I
So
know.
it's in the background there. So that's our commitment to the cause. And England aren't doing too well at the moment. It's so we might just leave it at that.
Yes, yes.
But so you talked about obviously moving in the direction of supporting people with disability. Did
Mhm.
that come from anywhere? Like how did that passion start, really?
Well, I think if to go back and reflect upon my experience, I think it comes from two different streams. First is my family, in particular my mother and my grandfather. My mother was a hairdresser. And spent a lot of time working in and out of aged care facilities and providing a service of cutting people's hair for people that were living in those facilities. And a large percentage of
Oh.
those people were people with disability. So I saw that social interaction. I saw the camaraderie, the backwards and forwards, but all the what my mother got out of providing a service to a population group that um, needed that service was absolutely quite lovely. And as
Mm,
a young boy, I saw that firsthand, and I thought that's really nice and lovely for my mother to provide that service. But I could see the benefit from both aspects, my mother, but also the clients, if you will, that she was providing that service to. My grandfather was very similar. My grandfather was a welder. And he would work all day, and then at night
mm,
time he would teach night school or at a TAFE college. And the students that he would teach were all young people with intellectual disabilities.
wow.
And as a young person going into that TAFE college and seeing my grandfather teaching some fairly high, complex, quite involved skills to young men and women that had um, an intellectual disability, but quite low literacy, numeracy levels, things like that, was absolutely amazing. And the end result was that my grandfather was supporting those young people to gain employment, to gain qualifications. And I think that really resonated with me, those two little experiences. From there, then moving into university, I was really fortunate to go to university with a Paralympian named Kurt Fernley. And I spent four
Is
years with Kurt.
right, okay. Just name drop a little bit there. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will, because it was
An
really
absolute legend. Yeah.
he's an absolute legend. But it was amazing because he was at that particular time starting out his journey as a
Right.
Paralympian, just building a name for himself. And it was really lovely for me to have a colleague, have someone in my classroom with me and work with, and complete as uni assignments with as well. But follow his progression, and he instilled in me that purpose value of what inclusion can be. And we've got some lovely experiences that we can reflect upon from our time together. But it's been really lovely to have that experience, or those combined experiences from my family. But the time I've spent in a classroom or in the university halls with Kurt has really resonated with me. And I think they're the main reasons why I've decided to go down this pathway as career pursuit.
Good on your mum and your granddad. And yeah, I think all these experiences shape who you are, don't they, as a person, and
Certainly do.
your values and stuff. And I think that I'm sure they'll be really proud of what you're doing now in your work and carrying on that kind of would you mentioned legacy, but it is in terms of that inclusion work. I'd love to ask you, what how do you define inclusion?
So, inclusion for me, when I speak to educators, when I go to conferences, and when I sit in our classroom with kindergarten students, I talk about inclusion all the time. And I think it doesn't matter if you're that seasoned professional, you're that expert educator with tens of years of experience, or you're that young person that's starting their schooling journey. I think it's about that belonging and acceptance of all difference. And I think through some of the targeted programs that we provide through the directorate, it's about really unpacking that sense of belonging, what it actually means to belong to a particular organization, a group, a society in general, and unpack that. Well, we can all actually contribute in any shape or form. And yes, some of us complete those tasks differently to others and have
Mm.
different pursuits or interests. But I think inclusion comes back to that, having that sense of belonging, sense of connectingness, if you will, as well, to community. I think is really important space. And for me, inclusion has been shaped by the disability scheme as well, but has also been shaped by other aspects that are involvement. I'm working quite extensively in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander space in the directorate as well. I've just spent some time this afternoon actually talking about how we can incorporate um, a racism or anti-racism focus into the inclusion offerings that we're discussing as well. So it's inclusion all is about that acceptance of everybody and having that sense of belonging or providing that sense of belonging to everybody within our communities.
I love that definition of belonging and connection and relationships, and because that gives you a sense of well-being as well, doesn't it? As
Certainly.
when with the whole person well-being. So thank you for sharing that. And just with the directorate then
Mhm.
and the work you do at ACT, tell us a little bit more about that.
So you mentioned earlier 89 schools. So we have 89 schools in Canberra. It will be growing very shortly. We have 90 schools as of next year, and it will be 91 as of the following year. So we're ever growing. My role is obviously working in the Education Support Office and supporting our 89 schools to develop and deliver their inclusive education programs. So that involves support with policy or accessing policy. It's also in regards to pedagogical practices as well. So
Mhm.
supporting our students, supporting our staff members to differentiate curriculum and to deliver curriculum that's best suited to our individual needs. Those schools that we're involved with is early childhood settings right through to our senior secondary college. So I have days where I go into a classroom with preschool students, and then after lunch I go into a classroom with year 12, year 11 and 12 students. So it's ever changing. The curriculum does change, and the clientele that I'm working with does change all the time. But it's a lovely challenge that I have definitely embraced in this space. Other aspects to this role is delivering professional learning in
Mm.
regards to particular areas, mentoring programs for schools. So I spend time with new educators and provide induction training for new staff members in this space and upskilling or capacity building in this space. And the networking opportunities that we provide as well, because we have so many great educators in our system. And what I find is if we can provide a space and time for everyone to get together and collaborate and
Mm.
discuss, it's only going to feed out to in our wider school community to um, to increase the options for our students out there and promote our inclusivity in that space as well.
Mm.
Some big things that we're doing outside of the particular focus of student with a disability, I've also been involved with student mentor programs. So working with high school students to develop almost a disability awareness program for 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So they then can be mentors and peers to students with disability and support
Great.
them in their transition into college systems, which is really
Mm.
quite lovely. And through some of those programs, we've then linked into providing some directorate-wide initiatives like combined schools events, initiatives, afternoon teas, and fun activities as well, which is really quite lovely. Pleasingly, these roles let me have or provide me with the opportunity to work with a bunch of external organisations as well. So care and
Mhm.
support services,
Mm.
sporting services as well, which is really lovely because I'm able to build my capacity and build my understanding and knowledge in this space as well. But to have those key stakeholders on board, because ultimately they're people that are working with our students as well, which is
Mm.
lovely. And if we're all on the same page of providing that targeted support, it's only going to ultimately result into increased outcomes for our students as well.
Now, with obviously you're going to be 91 schools soon, so you've got line of sight across education and within
Yep.
ACT. What are some of the challenges that you see? And yeah, and I'd be particularly interested in like physical activity levels and getting people more active.
Yeah, and it's always the big one. It's how can we get more people involved, active, and going down that pathway of pursuing a physical activity or a recreational activity, whatever it may be. I think big barriers that I'm forever faced with is that conception or that pre preconceived idea that my student or my young person has a disability, which means they're unable to participate in certain selections of activity, which I still find, and which is really quite interesting to me. And that's why through the targeted supports that we're providing, it's really trying to challenge that cultural perception. It's not about what people cannot do. It's about what can people do with the appropriate supports in place. So I think it's about that um, challenge of cultural perceptions, challenge that mindset, and then it's about supporting that with the best possible professional learning and best possible supports processes to help those students achieve those goals. I think what we're finding is that across the system, without a doubt, people are really quite motivated and keen to provide opportunities to everyone within their school cohorts, which is really
Mm.
quite lovely. There's just that apprehension, there's just that
Hmm.
little bit of hesitation, if you will,
Mm.
about trialing something different. And I think we're hitting that mark from the directorate's point of view is that we provide those mentoring programs, we provide those networking opportunities for people to say, well, this is what I am faced with within a classroom. I'm met with these needs of my students. This is how am I addressing them? And they
Mm.
really require and need that support, that
Mm.
feedback.
Mm.
And that's where myself and the wider team come into play and provide that support. And if we're unable to articulate a response, we pull in those external stakeholders to help support that space. Um, some things that do raise concerns always is that funding. We don't have enough funding to run this program and that type of thing. But there are other ways in which we can do that, and where there's things in which that we do deliver from a directorate point of view. We point people in the right frame of mind around and system supports for NDIS training and funding and that type of thing as well. So there's a lot of support services that are there available for our schools and for our educators so they can best support our young people.
Mm. Sounds like you got a lot of collective intelligence across kind of the system that you're working with, and whether you're supporting through mentoring programs or providing training initiatives or actually delivery or bringing in people outsourcing it. It seems like you've got a kind of good um, collective approach there. And whilst we're talking about disability,
Hmm.
it was International Day for People with Disabilities last Friday, I think. So
Certainly
with the
was.
with the theme of not all disabilities are visible.
Hmm.
So for somebody that works in the sector, what does that theme mean to you, and the day itself?
To be honest, working with International Day of People with Disabilities is a part of what I do each and every year. So I have annual plan each year to promote to schools and have school involvement and that type of thing. And when I heard initially that this was to be the theme for this year, it really quite resonated with me. Not all
Right.
disabilities are visible
Mm.
because I'm working in schools with people, with young people, with educators, that this is apparent. This is a part of everyday life for them. So what I what I the big thing for me is that with this theme, I think it has really helped and supported the programs that we've been able to deliver because we've been able to go out into schools and promote this theme and to really increase that acknowledgement or understanding of, well, yeah, not everybody with a disability has those sure telltale signs, a
Mm.
wheelchair, a hearing aid, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Sometimes we may need to understand the concept a little bit further of what that person actually brings to the table and what they can contribute from that perspective. Um, in regards to IDA, this year, some of the programming and things that we developed and put together this year really reflected that theme as such, and really went back to and focused on that that particular theme as such. And we provided
What were some
uh,
of those things?
so some of the things that we provided was I pulled together a resource hub that was available to all schools with particular information in regards to some of those disabilities aren't visible. So
Mm,
information in regards to anxiety disorders, ADHD, autism, bipolar, intellectual disabilities, and some support services that are available for schools to access, which was really quite lovely. And in supporting that, what we did was we provided some opportunities for staff members to have an experience to talk about and to break down those preconceived conceptions that were there. And what we discovered through panel forums and discussions and networking opportunities is, in regards to people with invisible disabilities, we were finding that they were experiencing or sometimes being accused of faking or imagining their disability or their symptoms, which was quite interesting for me to hear. But it was also showing to us as a broader system is to really break down those cultural barriers and to shape that as a learning opportunity and a chance for us to build and capacity build in that space as well.
mm,
So for us, using the iDay initiatives, we promoted that awareness and acceptance of people with a disability. And in years gone by, when it was not a COVID situation, I was
mm,
out and about in schools and providing those opportunities face to face and that type of thing. This year we had to switch to a virtual platform.
mm.
So some of the things that we did were we had a virtual disco for all of our
Oh,
students
wow.
to participate in. And the virtual disco was developed by one of the schools I previously worked at, but the students at that school, it's a specialist school, so all of the students have a intellectual disability, which could be viewed as an invisible disability.
Hmm.
And they prepared everything, all the communications, all the music, all the videos, everything like that, and we shared it out to the wider community. Schools opted in to
Yeah.
participate, which was lovely. We had a large percentage of our schools participate in the video disco. And then following that, we provided them with some reflective discussion pieces, which broke down what an invisible disability or a disability in general um, entails. What does it look like? What are some of
Hmm.
the barriers or social barriers that those people, the people with an invisible disability experience? And we're shifting that mindset from a
Mm.
student perspective to really absorb and to acknowledge and welcome and accept these people within our community, which is a really lovely experience. So iDay for me is an important part of my delivery.
Mm.
I can't wait until next year. Hopefully, we can get back out into the schools and have some more face to face. And next year, if we run a disco, I hope to be out dancing around with everybody as well. But for me, this year has been really quite lovely and has resonated with us, and we've shown that we can deliver in that virtual platform as well and still pass along the message and the importance of iDay with our community as well, which is lovely.
Yeah, great. Well done. And I would have loved to have been a part of that disco. It sounds super, super fun. And I think each year it's getting more and more awareness, isn't it? And a
Hmm.
bit broader. I think it's an important part in the calendar, as you say, Jay, but
Certainly.
it's really what happens every day, isn't it? You know, into I think this is our challenge. But I think we're getting there slowly.
We are
But
getting there. We are.
hmm,
And one of the young people that provided a video interview with me, I interviewed this young person with an intellectual disability, and he articulated to me within that process that it shouldn't just be this one day of the year, Jake. It should be every day. And pleasingly, those videos were shared out to all of the school communities. So having that student voice involvement, sharing that message out, it shouldn't just be that 3rd of December every year that we acknowledge and celebrate. It should be every day of the year. And I think that message coming from a young person best reflects the importance of the day and the messaging associated with it.
yeah, absolutely, very powerful. That sounds
Mhm.
like. And just shifting it a little bit.
Mm,
So, 1 in 2 people within Australia have got a chronic disease, and it's actually getting worse, as you know. And then
mm.
COVID hit as well. So, but if we could nudge one part of the system to improve the well-being of Australians, what would that be for you?
Well, as an educator, and I value lifelong learning, and I believe to go back to it, it has to be education as a part of the system that we can continue to strengthen this space in regards to improving the well-being of Australians. I think we're moving in the right shape and form within this space. I think the space supported by the Australian curriculum document and what we are putting into and the latest revisions in this space is really hoping to increase opportunities for strengthening that social emotional intelligence of people, all people in regards to this space, and via the programs that can be delivered by schools utilizing that space. I think we are moving in the right direction. I think that the Australian curriculum has an opportunity to really link back to that being age specific and appropriate and relevant to the intended audience and supporting that space. And I believe the programs that schools do deliver can continue to push that mindset and can continue to push that space more and more each day.
And because it sounds like you're quite positive that we're moving in the right direction.
Certainly.
We look at statistics, it's actually it that doesn't
Yep.
paint the same picture. But what is it that for you is make you talk about the Australian framework there, and that in terms of the curriculum. What is it? What are some of the things that are changing for you? Is it around, I don't know, nutrition and supporting students around that stuff? Is it working with their parents or whatever? I don't. Yeah, can you just
Yep.
unpack that a bit?
Yeah, I more than happy to. I think we've moved away from that traditionalist mindset of what physical activity was, moving back 10, 20, however many years. And originally it was participation in organised sport. We've moved away from that philosophy and we've adopted the physical literacy framework
Great.
initiative, which has really reflected and really changed that mindset of what it means to be physical active and how that can contribute to some of these factors.
Mm,
I think that then has increased the awareness of schools and the space to really adapt and change their programming. And with the students that I'm working with, what does that look like from a student with a disability perspective? I think we are moving in the right direction in regards to that. We are providing opportunities. We are going down recreational pathways for students as opposed to that organised structured sport, although that does still serve a purpose and it still has a valued space within our communities. I think the biggest thing for us is really challenging that. The stats and the statistics, they are showing that there is a decline. I'm first to admit that, but I think it's bringing in this as, yes, it's a school's responsibility, but it's a collective responsibility of the wider school community and
mm,
supporting that with valuable pathways. Your
mm,
education does not stop once the 3 o'clock school afternoon bell rings. It continues, and it doesn't
yeah.
necessarily mean that to continue in this shape or form, you need to pay your registration fee, buy the new set of football boots, whatever it may be, to participate in a
Mm,
particular activity. There are other options available for you to improve your health and fitness outcomes in this space. In regards to the nutrition point of view as well, I think there's a lot of work that has been happening around that space as well and providing skills for young people to care for themselves in regards to their nutritional intake and what they can prepare. I'm amazed when I'm working with young people and introducing them to fruits and vegetables that they have not seen before. And I've gone into and taken students to the grocery stores and walked them around the fresh produce sections and things like that. This
mm.
is this particular item, and this is why it's
Wow.
beneficial for your. So I think we're at the first and foremost, and I think for us it's that education, yes, at a school level, but then that feeds into the community education as well, and providing that service as a more a broader scheme as well does help to contribute to this space. And I think it's
Mm.
something that we'll always continue to work in
Mm.
and provide that support.
I think that's a really good example of not assuming, isn't it? That,
Correct.
children know that what different, there are different vegetables or foods, and yeah, that's really interesting actually. And back to just the physical activity
Mm,
element. Um, so it's great to hear about the physical literacy framework
yeah.
from Sports Australia, and that's been introduced. What about the physical activity guidelines and for children to meet? Is that something that the 91 schools are kind of on board with? And yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, so yes, we are on board, and yes, we do support it as a broader system. And in my work in previously in my physical education space work within the
Mm,
directorate, we're providing those provisions through policy support, curriculum development, capacity building, upskilling, and training in that space as well, which has been quite lovely. Um,
mm,
it has provided those opportunities to be flexible and for schools to be flexible and creative in that space and to
mm,
really unpack those offerings more and more and more. What we're finding is that the schools are now prioritizing those specialist roles, which is lovely. So those specialist PE teachers are being
mm.
prioritized in transfer rounds and things like that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And there's a value and an importance placed upon that particular role within the communities. We have such a strong culture here of school community, but also school participation within the wider sporting community here within Canberra. And I think that resonates back to some of these frameworks that are coming in and linking back to the opportunities through the curriculum that we do have available here. It's only going to increase those participations. Platforms. What we're finding though as well through some of the opportunities that are available through sporting schools and things like that as well, it's providing those pathways for young
Mm,
people to engage. The other aspect within the ACT Education Directorate is we have such a strong culture of outdoor education and recreation pursuits as well, which is
mm,
really quite lovely and supported by my many colleagues out there in the directorate. And we're surrounded by national parks. We have access to the snowfields, and it's only a short trip to the beaches as well. So we're regularly getting students out and about and finding and pursuing those other pursuits as well around snorkeling or skiing or hiking or snowshoeing or whatever it may be. It's about providing those opportunities and access for all students to be able to engage in those programs, which is lovely.
Jake, I'm moving to Canberra. Yeah, you're selling
Yeah,
it for
it's
me.
beautiful. Yeah, so
Come on, we're going to ACT. I'll speak to Jennifer, my better half. All right, well, that's great to better understand. And I'm just wondering, do you work with other states because you seem to have a really good flow of the work that you're doing over in ACT?
we do
Yeah.
through lots of the policy reviews and updates and development space. We do work collaborative with all of our states and
Mm,
territories in partnership, which is really really lovely.
mm,
Members of like myself within the Education Support Office, but also our school teachers attend when we're able to attend meetings and professional learning and sit on boards for other
mm,
jurisdictions as well. So we have this nice collaborative approach within the directorate. We're very fortunate. We're a small jurisdiction, although we do
mm,
have the 89 and growing school numbers. But we as a system contribute to the broader aspect of the Australian curriculum. I know in recent times with the Australian Curriculum Review, all states and territories were represented. I was a part of that process, and we had experts that were identified for particular subject areas or curriculum areas, if you will, representing the ACT on that and really push push valuable change in that space. And I think having that input from the ACT, but having that input from the other states and territories
mm.
as well, is really beneficial to the development of this space and continuing to provide those quality opportunities to our young people out in our nation.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's good to hear. And last question, Jake.
Hmm.
So this we've blown by. So where do you see yourself personally in the system, and how do you contribute and influence it?
Yeah, so me as a system, I see I've got my joggers on, I'm running, I'm on the ground doing it every single day. And that's where I've always seen myself. I'm that person that leads by example. I'd rather be that person that will run all day and work myself into a state and show that to my educators, to my students each and every day. I think the way that I influence it is through my actions, and if I can leave that legacy, as I said, leave that legacy or inspire the next person to take on the responsibilities to try that. I think it's a nice thing. I think my role within my work, I think providing those opportunities to other people to build their capacity to upskill themselves, but then to also pass on those skills to other people is really important. I think that's where my value lies, being that person on the ground, but then also being that person um, to provide that support and provide that assistance, be that person to share experiences, but then also to answer questions if need be and provide that support if need be. I think that's where I contribute best. And yeah, as I said before, I'm very, very lucky to do what I do. And yeah, I hope that it's contributing in the right shape and form.
I can just see in your tracksuit bottoms running around on the sports field. Uh,
Yep. That's me. When I was in schools, it was I'd wear this type of thing up top, and I'd have my joggers down the bottom, and that's me. That's me every single day.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Jake. And I think the sector's really lucky to have you, and certainly, ACT and all the work that you do in education and inclusion. I think it's fantastic. And yeah, loved chatting with you and learning more about the work that you do. And is there any other questions or anything that we've missed that you'd like to chat about?
No, I think we've covered lots of things today. It's been really lovely to have a chat and to once again talk about inclusion and talk about what we're doing here within the ACT. I think we're doing some amazing things at a directorate level that is impacting upon our schools, but it is touching base with other jurisdictions as well, which is lovely. And yeah, as I continue to say, I'm really quite lucky to do what I do and contribute to this space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Jake, and wishing you all the well. It's what we're a few weeks away from Christmas, and hopefully you'll get some downtime, and hopefully the England cricket will start pulling it back because
Yeah.
there's a couple of wickets have gone down. I think while we've been talking, so
Oh, really? Really? I'll have to go and have a look. It's day one, though. It's day one.
it
We've got.
is. It's only day one. So thanks again, Jake, and I hope to catch up with you soon in person.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, mate.